It's 7 o'clock in the morning. The kitchen is quiet, filled with the soft, promising light of a new day. Arnold stands at the counter, a glass of water in his hand. He opens the small prescription bottle, the familiar click of the child-proof cap, a tiny piece of his daily rhythm. He taps one small white pill into the palm of his hand. For a moment, he just looks at it. This isn't just a pill, it's a promise. A shield. It's the small act of diligence he performs every single morning to protect his heart, to honor the doctor's advice, to do the right thing. He swallows it with the water, a feeling of quiet virtue settling over him. He is in control. He is taking care of himself. It's a simple transaction, this one small pill in exchange for more years. More mornings just like this one. An hour later, Arnold is in his favorite armchair, the one worn smooth by years of reading and contemplation. The newspaper is folded in his lap. The quiet of the house is comfortable, a familiar blanket. The phone begins to ring from its cradle in the hallway. Without a thought, he pushes himself up from the deep cushions of the chair to answer it. And that's when it happens. The world doesn't just spin, it lurches. The floor seems to drop away from his feet while the ceiling rushes down to meet him. The familiar floral pattern of the wallpaper melts into a sickening, blurry wave. The edges of his vision begin to shrink, replaced by a creeping, fuzzy darkness. A cold wave of nausea washes over him as his knees, suddenly feeling like they're made of water, begin to buckle. Instinct takes over. His hand shoots out, slapping against the cool, solid plaster of the wall. His fingers dig in, his knuckles turning white as he fights to stay upright. He holds on, his eyes screwed shut, waiting for the world to stop its violent tilting. When he opens them again, the room is stable. But he is not. His heart is not just beating, it's a frantic drum against his ribs, a wild animal trying to escape his chest. A cold, clammy sweat has broken out across his forehead and the back of his neck. He takes a deep, ragged breath, then another. The immediate danger has passed, but it's replaced by something far worse. A cold, creeping dread. Because Arnold understands in that terrifying moment that what just happened wasn't simply a dizzy spell. It was a warning, a preview of a future he cannot accept. He looks around the home he has lived in for 40 years, and for the first time, he doesn't see a sanctuary. He sees a collection of threats. The sharp corner of the coffee table, the unforgiving tile of the kitchen floor, the top of the staircase, which now looks like the edge of a cliff. The fear that settles into his bones isn't an abstract concern about his blood pressure reading. It's the immediate, visceral fear of the fall. The fear of a broken hip. The fear that the very medicine meant to protect his life could, in a single clumsy moment, take away his independence. This is the silent bargain that millions of people are forced to make every morning. A trade-off between a potential far-off cardiac event and the immediate life-altering risk that now haunts every step Arnold takes in his own home. I'm Dr. Dean. For over 2 decades as a physician, I've sat with thousands of patients, and I've seen stories just like Arnold's play out time and time again. It's a story that isn't about a failing heart, but about a failing system. A system that is incredibly good at focusing on one thing, extending life, but often forgets to ask about the quality of that life. We celebrate the lab results, the blood pressure numbers, the statistical victories over long-term risk. But we rarely have a deep conversation about the daily lived experience of the treatments we prescribe. We don't talk enough about the fear that lingers after a dizzy spell, or the slow erosion of confidence that can turn a beloved home into a minefield of potential hazards. That conversation is why this channel exists. Our mission here is simple: to look at every common medical practice, every routine test, and every piece of standard advice through what I call the longevity lens. This lens forces us to ask a more complete set of questions. We don't just ask, does this treatment help someone live longer? We also ask, does this treatment help them live better? Does it preserve their independence? Does it enhance their ability to enjoy the years they have? Through this lens, a fall isn't a minor side effect. It's a catastrophic event that can change everything in an instant. My goal isn't to give you medical advice. It's to give you something far more powerful: the evidence, the context, and the framework you need to become a true partner in your own healthcare, not just a passenger along for the ride. I want to empower you to have a different kind of conversation with your doctor. A conversation where your personal goals and your daily quality of life are treated with the same importance as any number on a chart. And when we apply this longevity lens to something as seemingly simple as the timing of a blood pressure pill, it forces us to confront a deeply unsettling possibility. What if the single most common, most automatic piece of advice given about blood pressure medication is built on a dangerous blind spot for anyone over 60? What if that simple instruction, just take it with your breakfast, it's easier to remember, is inadvertently causing more harm than good for millions of people just like Arnold? This is the uncomfortable truth that often gets lost between the doctor's office and the pharmacy. We in the medical community are so laser focused on one single long-term metric, the risk of a heart attack or a stroke 5, 10, or 15 years from now, that we have become systematically blind to a risk that is immediate, life-altering, and standing right in front of us, the risk of a fall tomorrow morning. We are playing a long game with statistics, while our patients are living a real life in real time. And in that real life, a dizzy spell is not a footnote in a drug side effect profile. It's a terrifying loss of control. A fall is not an unfortunate event, it's a potential turning point from which there is often no full recovery. I call this the stability paradox. The very medication that is prescribed to give your cardiovascular system stability over the long term is the same medication that can introduce profound, dangerous instability into your physical day-to-day life. The pill meant to prevent a stroke in the future could be the very thing that causes a hip-shattering fall this week. For Arnold, the statistical chance of a cardiovascular event years down the line is an abstract concept. But the terror of the room tilting an hour after his morning pill, that is concrete. That is real. This isn't to say the medicine is wrong. It's to say our approach to it is dangerously simplistic. We've been treating the timing of this medication as a matter of convenience when the evidence is beginning to show it may be a critical matter of safety. So how did we get here? How can two vital goals, preventing strokes and preventing falls, be in such direct conflict? To understand that, we need to unpack the great medical debate that's happening right now, just beneath the surface of standard medical advice. We need to look at the landmark studies that are pulling doctors in two completely different directions. And most importantly, we need to understand how this conflict impacts you. So to navigate this complex issue, we're going to do three things together in this video. First, we will explore the great medical debate over morning versus evening medication. We'll look at the two monumental landmark studies that sit at the heart of this debate, studies with thousands of patients that arrived at shockingly different conclusions. Second, we'll step away from the statistical arguments about heart attacks and strokes, and we'll put on our longevity lens to focus on the immediate, tangible danger that Arnold is facing, the devastating risk of falls, and how medication timing plays a crucial role in either preventing them or, tragically, causing them. And finally, we'll tie all of this evidence together. By the end of this video, my promise to you is this: you won't walk away with a simple, one-size-fits-all answer, because in personalized medicine after the age of 60, those rarely exist, and they are rarely helpful. Instead, you'll have something far more powerful, a clear framework for thinking about this problem, and the exact evidence-based questions to ask your doctor to help you both find the right answer for you. And this debate is more than just academic. It's full of surprising twists and turns. As we dive in, we'll discuss the shocking results of a massive European study that the medical establishment is still struggling to reconcile. And later, I'll reveal the one type of person for whom changing their medication time could be the single most important health decision they make all year. Stay with me. But before we step onto that scientific battlefield, let's ground ourselves in our own shared experience. So I'm genuinely curious to see a snapshot of what's actually happening out there right now within this community. Before we dive into the evidence, I have a simple request. In the comment section below this video, just write one word, either morning or evening. That's it. No story or explanation is necessary unless you want to share one. This isn't a test and there is absolutely no judgment. It's simply a way for us all to get a sense of the common practice among this incredible group of proactive health advocates we've built here. It's a chance to see in real time what the default advice has led to. I read every comment, and seeing that collective experience helps us all understand that we are not alone in navigating these questions. Once you've done that, take a moment to scroll through and see what others have written. You'll likely see a pattern, but you'll also see variation. And that variation is key. It proves that there isn't one single answer that works for everyone. And that raises the most important question of all. How do you make sense of all this conflicting information and find the right path for yourself? To do that, we can't just look at the problem in the old way. We need a new framework, a new way of seeing. This is where we introduce the framework I use for every decision we discuss on this channel. It's the tool that allows us to cut through the noise of conflicting studies and conventional wisdom. I call it the longevity lens. The longevity lens is a simple but profound shift in perspective. It demands that we weigh every medical decision, not just on cold, hard statistics about extending life, but on its real-world impact on your independence, your confidence, and your ability to live a full, vibrant life right now. It asks a better question. What good are extra years if they are spent in fear or confinement? When we look at the problem of medication timing through this lens, the entire equation changes. A dizzy spell is no longer a minor, acceptable side effect. A potential fall is no longer a statistical risk to be managed. Through the longevity lens, a fall caused by a medication is a catastrophic failure of that treatment's primary purpose. It's an outcome that robs you of the very quality of life the medicine was meant to preserve. So, to apply this lens correctly, we have to go back to the very beginning. We need to establish the core principles of this framework, starting with the most basic one of all. What is the fundamental goal of this medication in the first place? So let's start with first principles. The primary goal of your blood pressure medication is elegantly simple: to lower the pressure inside your arteries, reducing the constant strain on your heart and blood vessels. Think of it like turning down the water pressure in an old house. Over months and years, this lower pressure dramatically reduces the long-term risk of a burst pipe, a catastrophic stroke, or the pump itself wearing out, which we call heart failure. It is a preventative strategy designed to protect you over the long run. To achieve this, most modern medications are designed for a 24-hour effect. You take one pill and it's meant to provide a steady, consistent benefit until your next dose. But here is the crucial detail that is almost never discussed in a standard doctor's visit. The effect isn't a perfectly flat line. When you take a pill, its concentration in your blood rises, hits a peak a few hours later, and then gradually declines over the rest of the day, reaching its lowest point, the trough, just before your next dose is due. This brings us to the first and perhaps most significant logical flaw in the "just take it in the morning" advice. If the ultimate goal is 24-hour stability, why does our standard approach intentionally create a daily cycle of a drug peak followed by a drug trough? And more importantly, what happens when that peak effect, the drug's moment of maximum power, coincides with the time of day you are most active and most upright? For Arnold, that peak happens mid-morning, precisely when he is moving around his house, standing up from chairs, and at the greatest risk of a fall. The medication itself is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But this peak and trough cycle it creates is only one half of the equation. The medication doesn't act in a vacuum, it acts within your body. And how an older body responds to that peak effect is profoundly different from how a younger body does. This is the second principle we must understand. Second, we have to acknowledge a fundamental truth. As we age, our bodies lose their buffer. The internal systems that once protected us become less resilient. Inside our arteries, we have tiny sensors called baroreceptors. Think of them as a rapid response team for your blood pressure. When you stand up, they instantly sense the drop in pressure as gravity pulls blood downwards, and they signal your heart to beat a bit faster and your blood vessels to tighten, ensuring your brain always has enough oxygen. In a 40-year-old, this system is lightning fast. The adjustment happens before they're even aware of it. But after 60, 70, or 80 years of service, that response team slows down. The signals aren't as strong, and the reaction isn't as quick. Now, add a powerful blood pressure medication at its peak concentration into that system. For someone like Arnold, that same simple act of standing up becomes a moment of high risk. The medication is already pushing his pressure down, and his body's slower safety system can't compensate in time. The result is that sickening lurch of dizziness, the blackout, the fall. This is the critical point. The medication hasn't changed, but your body's ability to tolerate its peak effect has. The risk-benefit calculation that was true at age 50 is no longer valid at age 75. And this single moment of vulnerability isn't just an isolated event. It is often the first domino to fall in a tragic chain reaction. A cascade that can transform a minor side effect into a life-altering loss of independence. Third, and this is the most insidious part of the stability paradox, that single moment of dizziness isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. It's the trigger for a devastating feedback loop that I call the cascade effect. And it is the single greatest threat to an older person's independence. It starts with that initial dizzy spell, just like the one Arnold experienced. That event plants a seed of fear, a deep, irrational fear of falling. This fear then changes behavior. He becomes hesitant. He thinks twice before standing up quickly. He might decide against going for his usual afternoon walk because the sidewalk seems uneven. He stops carrying the laundry basket down the stairs, waiting for someone else to help. He starts saying no to social outings because he's worried about navigating an unfamiliar space. This new, more cautious life leads directly to reduced activity, and reduced activity leads with absolute certainty to deconditioning. The leg muscles that were once strong begin to weaken. The fine-tuned sense of balance that kept him steady begins to decay. And here is the devastating irony. The fear of falling and the inactivity it causes makes a person more likely to fall. The very strategy the body adopts to protect itself becomes the primary source of its vulnerability. A simple medication side effect has now triggered a spiral that ends in frailty, isolation, and a profound loss of confidence. This isn't just a side effect to be noted in a chart. Through the longevity lens, we see it for what it is, a potential life trajectory. It's a quiet, creeping process that can rob someone of their quality of life far more certainly than a statistical risk of a stroke 10 years from now. This cascade effect is a preventable tragedy. Yet it's a tragedy that the standard, well-intentioned advice given by doctors every single day may be actively encouraging, which forces us to ask the most important question of all. If this cascade is so dangerous, why is the default advice given to millions of patients seemingly designed to trigger its very first step? Let's start with the first point, the standard conventional advice. For decades, the default instruction passed from doctor to patient has been remarkably consistent. Take your blood pressure medication in the morning. The rationale behind this is perfectly sound on the surface. Morning is a time of routine. You have breakfast, you brush your teeth, you take your pills. It's simple, it's memorable, and in medicine, consistency is prized above almost all else. A doctor knows that the most effective medication in the world has zero benefit if the patient forgets to take it. The entire system is therefore structured around a single primary goal, compliance, making it as easy as possible for people to adhere to their treatment day in and day out. Man, this isn't bad advice. It's a well-intentioned strategy designed to ensure millions of people get a baseline level of cardiovascular protection. But it forces us to ask a critical question through our longevity lens. Is that simple, one-size-fits-all advice, designed for maximum compliance, inadvertently coming at the cost of an individual's safety and quality of life? What happens when perfect compliance leads to a dangerous outcome? Let me introduce you to Margaret. She followed that morning rule perfectly, and her story reveals the hidden flaw in this seemingly logical advice. Margaret was the model patient. For 5 years, ever since her doctor first prescribed the little white pill, she had taken it at 8 a.m. sharp, right after her morning tea and toast. She never missed a day. Her blood pressure readings in the doctor's office were always perfect. By every medical metric, she was a success story. But Margaret didn't feel like a success story. She didn't have the dramatic, room-tilting dizziness that plagued Arnold. Hers was a quieter, more creeping kind of unease. A persistent low-grade fatigue that settled in around 10 in the morning and didn't lift until late afternoon. It was a mental fog, a feeling like her mind was wrapped in cotton wool. She struggled to focus on her crossword puzzles. She found herself rereading the same page of a novel over and over. Conversations felt like they were happening just out of reach, the words taking an extra moment to land. She mentioned it at her next checkup. She described the fatigue, the brain fog, the sense that her mornings had been stolen from her. Her doctor, a kind but busy man, listened patiently, nodded, and offered the most common and soul-crushing diagnosis of all. Well, Margaret, you are 73. We all slow down a bit as we get older. It was a dismissal wrapped in a truism. It was meant to be reassuring, but to Margaret, it felt like a life sentence. She was being told that this diminished state was her new normal, that the vibrant, sharp woman she knew herself to be was simply gone, a casualty of the calendar. But Margaret had always been the kind of person who balanced her checkbook to the penny. It wasn't about mistrust, it was about diligence. She decided to apply that same diligence to her own health. She bought a reliable home blood pressure monitor and started a logbook. Every day, 3 times a day. Once when she woke up, once at 11 a.m., and once just before bed. For the first week, the numbers seemed fine, confirming her doctor's view. But as the pages of her logbook filled, a subtle but undeniable pattern began to emerge. Her blood pressure upon waking was perfectly acceptable, sometimes even a little on the high side of normal. But at 11 a.m., 3 hours after she took her pill, it would plummet. It wasn't low enough to trigger an alarm, but it was consistently at the very bottom of the healthy range. This was the exact window of time when the brain fog was at its thickest, when her energy was at its lowest. Then, in the evenings, her readings would slowly creep back up again. She sat at her kitchen table one afternoon, the logbook open in front of her. It was all there, in neat columns of black ink. This wasn't just getting older. This was a cause and a clear effect. The morning pill was causing a mid-morning trough in her blood pressure, and that trough was stealing her clarity and her vitality. The very medication meant to protect her long-term health was actively degrading her daily quality of life. This was her inciting incident. This page of data was her proof that the one-size-fits-all advice wasn't fitting her at all. It empowered her, but it also raised a deeply unsettling question. If the evidence in her own logbook was so clear, why wasn't this a standard part of the conversation? What do the major medical authorities, the institutions that write the official guidelines for doctors everywhere, actually say about medication timing? The answer is both surprising and deeply revealing about the powerful inertia of the medical system. When Margaret or her doctor looks to the highest authorities for guidance, organizations like the American Heart Association or the UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, known as NICE, they find something that is, at first glance, surprisingly unhelpful. They are officially neutral. The guidelines do not recommend a specific time of day to take your medication. Instead, they stress one thing above all else: consistency. Just take it at the same time every day, morning or evening, it doesn't matter, as long as you don't miss it. Now, this position comes from a place of well-intentioned pragmatism. For years, there simply wasn't enough large-scale, compelling evidence to definitively favor one time over another. In the absence of that evidence, the system defaults to what it knows works for the population as a whole: simple, clear rules that are easy to follow and maximize compliance. Nuanced, personalized advice is difficult to scale. A simple rule is not. But this creates a dangerous lag. The ship of medical consensus is enormous. It takes years, sometimes decades, of overwhelming evidence to make it turn, even by a few degrees. So the critical question we have to ask ourselves is this: what happens in the meantime? What happens when groundbreaking new evidence does emerge, but the official guidelines haven't yet caught up? While the institutions debate the long-term statistical data, people like Arnold and Margaret are living with the immediate, real-world consequences of that institutional inertia. The official neutrality on timing overlooks a risk that isn't abstract at all. It's a risk that is terrifyingly concrete, measured in emergency room visits, broken bones, and shattered confidence. And when we look at the actual numbers, the scale of this overlooked danger becomes impossible to ignore. Let's move away from the abstract world of guidelines and into the stark reality of what is at stake. The numbers, when you truly look at them, are staggering. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in every 4 older Americans will fall this year. 1 in 4? To make that number feel real, I want you to picture a large university football stadium. Imagine it's completely filled with 75,000 fans over the age of 65. They're cheering, enjoying the game, living their lives. Now, fast forward 1 year. Of those 75,000 people, nearly 19,000 of them will have fallen. Many will end up in an emergency room. A significant number will suffer a serious injury, like a hip fracture. And for those who do fracture a hip, the statistics become truly grim. Up to 30% will not survive the year that follows. These are not just numbers on a public health report. These are life-altering, independent-shattering events. And it forces us to ask the uncomfortable but absolutely essential question: how many of those 19,000 falls started with a moment of preventable, medication-induced dizziness? How many of those life-changing injuries were precipitated by a completely avoidable dizzy spell that happened an hour or two after breakfast, when a morning-dosed blood pressure pill reached its peak effect? We don't know the exact number because we aren't systematically asking the right questions. But we know it isn't zero. We are so focused on the long-term statistical risk of a cardiovascular event that we are failing to see the clear and present danger right in front of us. We are defending the front door from a potential future threat while leaving the back door wide open to an immediate one. This is a tragic and unnecessary trade-off. It's a problem created by a one-size-fits-all approach to a deeply personal biological process. But what if there's a better way? What if we could achieve the same, or even better, cardiovascular protection while dramatically reducing this immediate risk? What if the solution isn't about a different medication, but a different schedule? This leads us to an incredibly powerful and elegant alternative. It's an approach that doesn't require a new pill or an expensive procedure. Instead, it asks a simple but profound question. Are we synchronizing our treatments with our body's own internal clock? This is the core idea behind a field of medicine called chronotherapy. Chronotherapy is the science of aligning medical treatment with the body's natural circadian rhythms, the 24-hour cycles of sleep, hormone release, and metabolism that govern our lives. It reframes the question from, when is it most convenient to take this pill? When will this pill be most effective and, crucially, most safe? What if we could dramatically increase the safety and effectiveness of a medication, not by changing the dose or the drug itself, but by simply changing the time it's taken? This is the promise of chronotherapy. A simple, no-cost intervention that has the potential to solve the stability paradox for people like Arnold and Margaret. It suggests that we could have the peak effect of the medication, the time of maximum blood pressure lowering, occur while you are safely asleep in bed, not while you're up and about. This would protect you from dizziness and falls during the day, while also potentially offering better control of your blood pressure overnight. This very idea was put to the test in a groundbreaking study that sent shockwaves through the cardiology community, forcing everyone to reconsider the simple advice they had been giving for decades. In 2020, the entire field of chronotherapy was thrust into the spotlight by a single monumental piece of research from Spain, the HYGIA chronotherapy trial. This wasn't a small observational study that could be easily dismissed. It was a research powerhouse. Researchers followed over 19,000 people with high blood pressure for, on average, more than 6 years. It was a massive, long-term, and meticulously designed effort to answer one simple but revolutionary question. Does the time you take your medication matter as much as the medication itself? The patients were randomly assigned to one of two groups. The first group followed conventional wisdom, taking all their prescribed blood pressure pills in a single dose upon waking. The second group did something radically simple. They took their pills at bedtime. For 6 years, the researchers tracked them, waiting to see if this simple change in timing would make any meaningful difference. The results, when they were finally published in the European Heart Journal, sent profound shockwaves through the global cardiology community. The findings weren't just significant, they were staggering. The group that took their medication at bedtime had a 45% lower risk of what's called the primary cardiovascular outcome. That's the medical term for the things we are all trying to avoid: death from a heart-related cause, a heart attack, a stroke, heart failure, or needing a procedure to unblock a coronary artery. Let me repeat that, because it's a number that is difficult to comprehend. 45%! It wasn't a 5 or 10% difference, which would have been newsworthy. It was nearly a halving of the risk of the most feared outcomes in modern medicine. This wasn't achieved with a new billion-dollar drug with a long list of side effects. It was achieved by asking people to take their existing medication at a different time of day. The finding was so powerful, so disruptive, that it challenged the very foundation of the simple, routine advice that doctors had been giving for generations. A result that massive begs a simple question: what is happening inside the body at night that could possibly account for such a dramatic difference in outcomes? To answer that, we need to understand a hidden pattern in our blood pressure that most people have never even heard of. Under normal circumstances, when we go to sleep, our blood pressure is supposed to take a significant dip, usually by about 10 to 20%. This nocturnal dip is not just a side effect of sleep, it's a vital period of rest and repair for our entire cardiovascular system. But for a large percentage of people with hypertension, especially as we age, this natural dip doesn't happen. Their blood pressure stays stubbornly elevated all through the night. In medical terms, these individuals are called non-dippers. To understand why this is so dangerous, I want you to think of your blood pressure as the tide and your arteries as the shoreline. During the day, when you're active, it's high tide. The waves are crashing and the system is under pressure. This is normal. But at night, the tide is supposed to go out, exposing the shoreline and giving it a period of calm to recover from the day's stress. For a non-dipper, that tide never goes out. It is a relentless 24-hour high tide, constantly battering and eroding the coastline. There is no rest, no recovery. This constant, unrelenting pressure is a massive risk factor for cardiovascular events, silently doing damage while a person sleeps. The powerful insight from the HYGIA study is that taking your medication at bedtime essentially forces the tide to go out. It artificially creates that protective nighttime dip that the body's no longer providing on its own. This accomplishes two critical things. First, it gives the entire system that desperately needed 8 hours of rest, protecting your heart and blood vessels during their most important repair cycle. And second, it ensures the medication is at a strong level to control the dangerous blood pressure surge that naturally occurs when we wake up, a time when heart attacks and strokes are most common. This isn't just a clever timing trick, it's a profound physiological intervention. And when you apply this logic to the real-world experience of a person like Arnold, the potential benefits become crystal clear, offering a solution not just to one problem, but two. Now, let's bring this powerful idea out of the realm of clinical trials and back into the quiet hallway where Arnold is standing, his hand pressed against the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. For a man like him, the findings of the HYGIA study aren't just statistics, they represent a potential lifeline. A pathway out of the fear that has suddenly taken root in his own home. Think about the double benefit this simple change in timing could offer him. First, there's the silent, invisible protection. It's entirely possible that Arnold is a non-dipper. For years, while he's been sleeping, his blood pressure may have been playing the part of a silent saboteur, that relentless high tide eroding the coastline of his arteries, leaving him most vulnerable in the early morning hours. A single pill taken at bedtime would act as a night watchman, forcing that tide to recede, giving his system a desperately needed period of rest and repair, and standing guard against that dangerous morning surge. This is the long-term, life-extending benefit the study so clearly pointed to. But for Arnold, the second benefit is the one that would change his life tomorrow. It directly addresses the terror that has just gripped him. The peak effect of his medication, that moment of maximum power that sent his world into a sickening spin, would now be redeployed. Instead of arriving mid-morning while he's active, it would arrive in the middle of the night while he is safely and soundly asleep in his bed. The drug's greatest strength would be deployed not as a threat to his stability, but as a guardian of his rest. The dizzy spell that ambushed him after breakfast would simply not happen. The fall that now haunts his every step would become a ghost, its power to intimidate him diminished. The sharp corner of the coffee table would revert to being just a piece of furniture. The top of the stairs would no longer look like a cliff's edge. His home would transform back from a minefield into a sanctuary. His confidence, so profoundly shaken, could begin to heal. This is the promise of chronotherapy, viewed through the longevity lens. It isn't just about adding years to his life, it's about restoring the quality of his days. This all sounds like a perfect solution, doesn't it? A clear win-win. Better cardiovascular protection and a dramatic reduction in the immediate, life-altering risk of falls. So why hasn't every doctor in the world immediately switched their advice? Why isn't this the new undisputed standard of care? Before we get to the heart of that controversy, I have a quick request. If you're finding this breakdown of the actual evidence, not just the headlines, is giving you a new sense of clarity, please take a moment to click the like button. It's a small signal, but it's incredibly helpful. It tells me that this is the kind of deep analysis that empowers you and that we're on the right track together. The reason for the medical world's hesitation is because the story, as compelling as it is, doesn't end there. Scientific truth is rarely found in a single study, no matter how powerful. It's a conversation. And remember that loop I opened earlier about a study that complicated everything? Well, just as the world was absorbing the implications of HYGIA, another scientific heavyweight, an even larger study from the UK, stepped into the ring. It was designed to settle this debate once and for all, and its conclusion threw everything into question. Well, in 2022, it arrived. It was called the Time Study, conducted across the United Kingdom, and it was even larger than HYGIA. This wasn't just another piece of research. This was the official response. It was designed with one clear purpose, to be the definitive final word on the matter. It was meant to either confirm the revolutionary findings from Spain, and in doing so, change medical practice forever, or to refute them and restore the old established order. The entire cardiology community was holding its breath. They recruited over 21,000 people, a massive cohort, and just like in the HYGIA trial, they were randomly split into two groups, one taking their medication in the morning, the other at night. The researchers then sat back and watched for 5 long years, meticulously tracking the very same outcomes: heart attacks, strokes, and vascular death. This was the heavyweight title fight, the scientific showdown that was supposed to settle the debate once and for all. Everyone expected a clear winner, and its conclusion was completely and utterly different. After tracking over 21,000 people for 5 years, the researchers behind the Time study published their bombshell conclusion. The difference in heart attacks, strokes, or vascular death between the group that took their pills in the morning and the group that took them at night was 0. No statistically significant difference. None. Let that sink in. One massive, well-conducted study, HYGIA, finds a staggering 45% reduction in risk with bedtime dosing. Another, even larger, equally well-conducted study, Time, finds absolutely no benefit at all. This is the very definition of a scientific head-scratcher. It's the kind of result that leaves everyone in a state of paralysis. What is a thoughtful, conscientious doctor supposed to recommend? On one hand, they have a study suggesting a simple change could nearly halve their patient's risk. On the other, they have an even bigger study suggesting it makes no difference whatsoever. And what on earth is a patient supposed to do? For someone like Arnold, still feeling the phantom tilt of the room, this scientific whiplash is maddening. For Margaret, staring at the clear pattern in her own logbook, it feels like a dismissal of her lived experience. Do you follow the stunning promise of the first study, or the reassuring neutrality of the second? Do you make a change that could be life-saving, or stick with a routine that might be causing harm for no reason? This is the great debate happening right now, and you are caught in the middle of it. It's the reason the official guidelines remain neutral, and the reason your doctor might seem hesitant to give a firm recommendation. The medical world is polarized because the evidence itself is polarized. But here is where we must apply our longevity lens. This isn't a story of good science versus bad science. It's not about one study being right and the other being wrong. This is a story about nuance. It's about looking past the headlines and digging into the hidden details. Because when we ask why these two massive studies might have reached such different conclusions, a new and far more practical truth begins to emerge. It's a truth hidden in the fine print, a truth that has everything to do with who was in these studies, and more importantly, what the researchers were and were not looking for. First, there was a key difference in the populations. The Spanish population in the HYGIA study had a higher proportion of people who were non-dippers. Their blood pressure wasn't dropping at night as it should. For this specific group, a therapy designed to force that nighttime dip would logically have a much more dramatic and positive effect. The population in the UK-based Time study, by comparison, appeared to have better controlled blood pressure overall, with fewer non-dippers. So giving them nighttime medication was like offering a solution to a problem that many of them didn't have as severely. Second, there was a difference in measurement. The HYGIA trial went to great lengths to use what's called 48-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. This means patients wore a cuff that automatically took their blood pressure every 20 to 30 minutes for 2 full days and nights. This provides a rich, detailed movie of what's happening inside the body. The Time study, while excellent, relied more on clinic and home-based readings, which are more like a few snapshots than a continuous film. It's possible that the more rigorous measurement used in HYGIA simply captured a more accurate picture of the real benefits of controlling that nighttime pressure. But the simple most important difference, the detail that changes everything when we look through our longevity lens, isn't about the who or the how. It's about the what. What was the primary goal of each study? What was the one main outcome they were designed to measure? And here is the crucial hidden truth. The Time study was designed to answer a cardiologist's question. Its primary endpoint, the finish line it was looking for, was a heart attack, a stroke, or vascular death. That's it. While it did note side effects like falls, they were a secondary observation, not the main goal of the research. The study was a powerful investigation into long-term cardiovascular mortality. It was not, however, designed to be an investigation into short-term quality of life or the immediate risk of injury. This is the critical distinction. The Time study wasn't looking for hip fractures, it was looking for heart attacks. It wasn't measuring a person's daily confidence, it was measuring their 5-year survival rate from a stroke. For someone like Arnold, whose entire world has shrunk because of a dizzy spell, a study that doesn't prioritize falls as a key outcome is missing the most important part of the story. It's answering a question that for him is no longer the most urgent one. The debate between a 45% risk reduction and a 0% risk reduction for a heart attack in 5 years is an abstract statistical argument. The risk of him falling on his way to the bathroom tomorrow morning is not abstract. It is terrifyingly real. This is precisely where we must stop thinking like researchers and start thinking like human beings. This is the moment to put on the longevity lens. This is the fundamental disconnect between the goals of a clinical trial and the goals of a person trying to live a good life. A study's primary endpoint is the finish line it's designed to measure. In this case, heart attacks and strokes. And that's a worthy goal. But an older person's primary endpoint, the thing that determines their day-to-day quality of life, is often something much more immediate, maintaining their independence. Not falling. Your fear of falling is not an overreaction. It is a rational, legitimate response to a catastrophic risk. And that fear deserves to be treated as a primary outcome, just as important as any number on a blood pressure chart. When we view it this way, the scientific debate about long-term cardiac outcomes becomes secondary. The most important question is no longer which timing is better for my heart in 2029. The most important question becomes which timing is safer for my body tomorrow morning. We must prioritize the threat that is closest. We must solve for the immediate danger of the fall before we can confidently plan for the more distant danger of a stroke. When we fail to do this, when we prioritize the long-term statistic over the short-term reality, we create a situation that is not just dangerous, but deeply ironic. The very medicine we prescribe to safeguard the future can become the instrument of a tragedy that happens next week. The medical term for what Arnold experienced is orthostatic hypotension. It sounds complex, but the concept is simple. When you stand up, gravity acts like a silent thief, pulling about a pint of your blood down into your legs and abdomen. Instantly, your body's internal safety system, those baroreceptors we talked about, should kick in, tightening blood vessels and speeding up your heart to shoot that blood right back up to your brain. But antihypertensive medications, by their very nature, are designed to relax blood vessels and lower pressure. In doing so, they can blunt this rapid response system. They dampen the signal. Your body still senses the drop in pressure, but its ability to react with speed and force is compromised. For a split second, your brain is starved of oxygen and the world tilts. Now here is the most crucial piece of the puzzle. This blunting effect is not constant throughout the day. It is at its absolute strongest when the drug concentration in your blood is at its peak, typically 2 to 4 hours after you take the pill. For millions of people following the standard advice, this window of maximum vulnerability lands squarely in the middle of the morning. It's a predictable daily appointment with instability, scheduled precisely when you are most likely to be active, getting out of a car, standing up from your desk, or rising from your favorite armchair to answer the phone. The medication isn't failing, it's working exactly as designed, but its peak effect is creating a daily trap. This isn't a random side effect, it's a predictable consequence of timing. The answer then isn't a new pill. It isn't a complex device. The most powerful tool we have to solve this doesn't come from a pharmacy at all. It's a structured conversation with your doctor, armed with the right data and the right questions. This is the tool that cuts through the confusion. You possess unparalleled knowledge regarding your physical self and your moment-to-moment sensations. That brain fog Margaret felt mid-morning, that sickening lurch Arnold experienced when he stood up, that is data. It is real, valid, and critically important information. The billion-dollar studies, the conflicting headlines from HYGIA and Time are useless until they are combined with your personal expertise. You provide the real-world context that turns abstract statistics into a personal action plan. The goal isn't to walk into your doctor's office and demand a change. It's to open a new kind of dialogue. One where you're not just a passive recipient of advice, but an active, informed partner in the decision-making process. You are bringing new evidence to the table, the evidence of your own life, and asking your physician to help you interpret it alongside the clinical trial data. You are there to solve a problem together. How do we protect my heart for the long run without sacrificing my safety and quality of life today? This conversation reframes the entire goal. It shifts the focus from simple compliance, just taking the pill, to achieving the optimal outcome, which includes feeling good, staying active, and remaining independent. It transforms the doctor-patient relationship from a hierarchy into a partnership, and that partnership is the foundation of truly personalized medicine. This conversation is essential for everyone, but for one particular group of people, it is absolutely critical. Remember earlier, I promised to reveal the one type of person for whom changing their medication time could be the most important health decision they make all year. For these individuals, the logic of the HYGIA study isn't just compelling, it's a potential roadmap out of a hidden physiological trap that puts them at a much higher risk. This conversation is their key to unlocking that map. This is that moment. We're talking about the non-dippers, the people whose blood pressure fails to take that vital protective dip during sleep. For them, the night is not a time of rest, but a period of silent, sustained cardiovascular stress. So who is most likely to be a non-dipper? The evidence points to a few specific groups. People with obstructive sleep apnea, those with chronic kidney disease, individuals with diabetes, and quite simply, many people of advanced age are at a much higher risk of having this hidden condition. And here is the punchline. For these individuals, the logic of the HYGI study isn't just an interesting theory, it's a powerful and targeted intervention. Switching to a bedtime dose is no longer just about avoiding morning dizziness. It's about correcting a fundamental 24-hour physiological flaw. It's a strategy to actively combat the relentless high tide of pressure that is silently damaging their system while they sleep, and to protect them from the dangerous blood pressure surge upon waking. For a non-dipper, bedtime dosing aligns the medication's peak power with the body's greatest moment of need. This raises the obvious and most urgent question of all: how do you know if you are a non-dipper? And the answer to that question reveals a frustrating practical paradox at the very heart of routine medical care. The gold standard for finding out if you're a non-dipper is a device called a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. It's a small, portable machine connected to a cuff on your arm that you wear for a full day and night. It automatically takes your blood pressure every 20 to 30 minutes, giving your doctor a complete, detailed film of how your pressure behaves, especially while you sleep. It's the only way to definitively know if your body is getting that crucial nocturnal rest. And here we arrive at the practical, maddening catch-22 of our current medical system. This test, the very tool that could provide the crucial piece of data to justify a change in medication timing, is often not prescribed routinely. It's typically reserved for diagnosing complex cases of hypertension, or for when a doctor suspects something is seriously wrong. It's not seen as a first-line tool for optimizing an already prescribed treatment. This creates a frustrating paradoxical loop. You might need the monitor to get the evidence to justify changing your medication time, but you often can't get the monitor prescribed unless you already have a problem that changing the medication time might solve. Your doctor might logically say, "We don't have any proof you're a non-dipper, so let's stick with the standard morning routine." But you are being denied the very tool that could provide that proof. It's a systemic barrier, a frustrating piece of circular logic that keeps patients and doctors locked in a holding pattern, unable to access the personalized data that could resolve the entire debate for you as an individual. This isn't about blaming physicians. They are working within a system that prizes efficiency and standard protocols. But it does mean that the burden of breaking this cycle falls squarely on you, the empowered patient. You're trapped between the stunning promise of one study, the neutralizing conclusion of another, and a system that makes it difficult to discover which of those studies actually applies to your unique physiology. This is the part of the video where I could tell you a neat and tidy story. I could tell you that Margaret took her logbook to her doctor, who was so impressed that he immediately switched her to an evening dose, and within a week her morning fog lifted completely. I could tell you that Arnold had a frank conversation about his fear of falling, made the change, and regained the confidence to walk freely in his own home. And while those stories might be satisfying, they would also be a profound disservice to you. Because your journey is not a simple anecdote. The challenges you face, the nuances of your own health, and the specifics of your life are too important to be reduced to a tidy, happily ever after narrative. To give you a simple story would be to reinforce the very problem we're trying to solve, the idea that there is one easy, one-size-fits-all answer. There isn't. Arnold's story is a warning. Margaret's diligence is a model. But your story is the only one that truly matters. Your experience is the primary evidence. Your goals are the primary endpoint. So I'm going to break the pattern. I'm refusing the simple anecdote to make room for something far more significant. Instead of giving you a neat, tidy ending to someone else's story, I want to give you a powerful beginning for your own, the start of a new, collaborative, and evidence-based conversation with your doctor. So now we arrive at the most practical, and I believe the most important part of this entire video. We've explored the science, we've weighed the conflicting evidence, and we've seen the profound human cost through the experiences of Arnold and Margaret. At the very beginning, I promised you wouldn't walk away with a simplistic one-size-fits-all answer, but with something far more powerful, a framework to help you and your doctor find the right answer for you. That framework is built on a specific set of tools. I'm going to give you 5 empowering questions to take to your next doctor's appointment. These aren't just random queries. They are a carefully constructed protocol designed to move the conversation from generalities to your specific situation. And let me be very clear about the goal here. This is not about confrontation. It's not about walking in and demanding a change based on a video you watched. The goal is to open a collaborative discussion. You are bringing new evidence to the table, the data from the major clinical trials, yes, but more importantly, the invaluable data of your own daily experience. You're shifting the dynamic from passive patient to active partner. So I encourage you, grab a pen or open the Notes app on your phone. Write these down. Having these questions prepared and in front of you is the single best way to transform any anxiety you might feel into calm, focused confidence during your appointment. Each question builds on the last, creating a logical path that helps your doctor understand your priorities through the longevity lens. They are your script for a better conversation. Let's go through them, one by one. Here are the 5 questions. Each one is a key that unlocks a different part of the conversation. Question number 1 is your starting point. It connects your personal experience directly to the medical treatment. Doctor, I've been experiencing some, and here you insert your own symptom. Dizziness, lightheadedness, or that morning fatigue and brain fog that Margaret felt? Could the timing of my blood pressure medication be contributing to this? This question is powerful because it's not an accusation. It's an observation and a query. It validates your own experience as important data and invites your doctor to become a detective alongside you. It immediately frames the discussion around your quality of life, not just the numbers on a chart. It takes the abstract problem we've been discussing and makes it concrete, personal, and urgent. Question number 2 positions you as an informed, engaged partner. You'll ask, I've read about the conflicting results of the HYGIA and time studies. Given my personal health profile, what is your perspective on bedtime dosing for me? This single sentence accomplishes 3 critical things. It respectfully acknowledges the complexity of the issue. It shows you've done your homework, which elevates the level of the conversation. And most importantly, it asks for your doctor's specific expertise as it applies to you, not for a generic textbook answer. You're not challenging their authority, you're inviting them to apply it in a more personalized way, transforming the dynamic from a lecture into a consultation. Question number 3 explicitly brings the longevity lens into the room. It defines success on your terms. My main goal right now is to prevent falls and maintain my independence. How can we weigh that immediate risk against the long-term cardiovascular benefits? This is the heart of the matter. You are respectfully asking your doctor to shift their focus from the statistical future to your physical present. It's a request to recalibrate the risk-benefit equation. You're not saying the long-term benefits aren't important. You're saying that for you, at this stage of life, the immediate threat of a fall, the threat to your independence, is a catastrophic risk that must be given equal, if not greater, weight in the decision-making process. Question number 4 moves the conversation from theory to a practical, low-risk action. You'll propose, would it be possible for us to do a controlled trial of evening dosing just to see how it affects my symptoms and my blood pressure readings? This is a masterful question because it's not a demand, it's a suggestion for a collaborative experiment. It shows you are willing to gather more data. You're not asking for a permanent, irreversible change. You're proposing a short-term, reversible test? It's a reasonable, scientific, and cautious approach that is very difficult for a good physician to refuse. It makes you a co-investigator in the study of your own health, with your doctor as your lead researcher. Finally, question number 5 addresses the underlying physiology we discussed. It goes one level deeper. You'll ask, based on my health profile, is there any reason to think I might be a non-dipper? Is ambulatory monitoring something we should consider at some point to get a clearer picture? This question demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the issue. It shows you're not just focused on symptoms, but on the potential root cause. It also offers the doctor another diagnostic pathway. Even if they are hesitant to change the timing without more data, this question opens the door to getting that very data. It's a way to break the catch-22 we talked about earlier by putting the definitive test on the table as a reasonable option to explore. These 5 questions are your tools. They are designed to be respectful, evidence-based, and collaborative. They build a logical bridge from your personal experience to a shared, personalized action plan. And the way your doctor responds to these questions, the way they engage with this conversation you've started, will tell you everything you need to know about the kind of partnership you truly have. Now, let's be very clear about what should happen when you bring these questions into your appointment. A good physician, a true partner in your health, will welcome this conversation. They won't see you as difficult or challenging. They will see you as an engaged, informed patient who is taking an active role in their own well-being. They may not agree with everything, and they may have a different perspective based on your specific health history, but they will listen. They will respect your experience. They will engage with the evidence and have a thoughtful discussion about the pros and cons. That is the sign of a healthy, collaborative partnership. However, you must also be prepared for a different kind of response. And this is the red flag. If your doctor dismisses these questions out of hand, if they refuse to discuss them, if they give you a simple paternalistic answer like, "The time doesn't matter, just take the pill," that is also a form of data. It's data that tells you their approach may not be as personalized as you need it to be at this stage of your life. An answer like that prioritizes protocol over your personal experience and efficiency over your quality of life. If you are met with that kind of dismissal, you need to hear this. It is always your right to seek a second opinion. Because this conversation isn't just about finding a good doctor. It's about insisting on a better kind of medicine. A kind of medicine that recognizes that for those of us over 60, the entire definition of success begins to change. Modern medicine is a phenomenal achievement. It is brilliant at finding answers for the average person, at creating protocols that work for the statistical middle. But after 60, and certainly after 70 or 80, none of us are average anymore. We are a unique collection of a lifetime of experiences, a specific set of risks, and a deeply personal set of goals. At this stage, a medicine of averages is no longer enough. We need a medicine of the individual. This is where we must see the profound difference between medicine that is good at finding things, a high number on a chart, a potential risk on a scan, and medicine that is designed to help you live well. True health, when viewed through the longevity lens, isn't just about the absence of disease or a blood pressure reading that fits neatly within a guideline. It's about confidence. It's about the freedom of movement. It's about the quiet, unshakable peace of mind that comes from feeling stable on your own 2 feet. It's about having the energy and clarity to be present in your own life. It is, above all else, about preventing the fall that changes everything. The numbers from the HYGIA study and the Time study are just tools. They are pieces of evidence we use to build a better life, not rules we must blindly follow at the expense of that life. The ultimate goal isn't to win a debate about which study was right. It's to ensure that people like Arnold can rise from a chair without the world tilting, and that people like Margaret can enjoy their morning without a creeping fog stealing their vitality. It's about ensuring they and you can navigate their own homes and their own lives with stability and grace. This requires a shift in our thinking. It's a move away from a system that asks, "What does the protocol say?" and toward one that asks, "What does this person need?" It's about building a partnership with your physician where your lived experience is treated as the most valuable piece of data in the room. It's about insisting that your quality of life is not a side effect to be managed, but the primary outcome we are all working to achieve. This patient-first philosophy, this commitment to placing your independence and your well-being at the absolute center of every medical conversation is the foundation of everything we do here. If this evidence-based, patient-first approach to health is what you believe medicine should be, then I invite you to make this your home base for navigating the years ahead. Subscribe to Keystone Health. Every single week, we take on another piece of conventional medical wisdom, look at it through the longevity lens, and break down the real evidence in a way you can use. We are committed to helping you navigate the complexities of healthcare, not with fear or confusion, but with clarity and unwavering confidence. By clicking that subscribe button and the little bell icon next to it, you're not just getting alerts for new videos. You are making a statement that your quality of life is non-negotiable. You're joining a movement of people who insist on being partners in their care, not just passengers. This is more than just a channel. It's a community of proactive advocates who understand that the conversation itself is the most powerful form of medicine. And that community and the stories within it are where the true power of this journey is found. A few minutes ago, I asked you to write a single word in the comments. Now, I invite you to do something powerful. Scroll down and simply look at that tapestry of shared experience. Look at all those morning and evening comments. You are not navigating this journey by yourself. You are surrounded by thousands of people asking the same questions, facing the same challenges, and searching for the same clarity. That is the true strength of this community. It's a living library where individual stories become our collective wisdom. And now I want to invite you to add your voice to that library in a deeper way. If you have ever had a conversation with your doctor about the timing of your medication, whether it was successful or difficult or just the very first step, I encourage you to share your experience below. What question finally gave you the confidence to speak up? How did your doctor respond? What did you learn in that moment? Your story, your words, might be the single most important thing someone else reads today. Your experience of being dismissed might validate their frustration. Your story of being heard might give them the courage they need to schedule their own appointment. You could be the turning point for a complete stranger. The data from clinical trials can tell us what works for the average. But it is our shared human stories that show us how to live well as individuals. Thank you for being part of this vital conversation. After everything we've discussed about the power of your own experience, what do you believe is the single biggest barrier preventing people from questioning their doctor's advice? Answer in the comments below. I read and reply to every single one. In our next video, we'll follow this trail from blood pressure to a common sound many people hear that could be a hidden warning from your heart. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't lose access to that truth. Like this video as a signal you understand, and share it with someone who needs this clarity.